This is a narration of What is Libertarianism, an introduction to the philosophy of liberty, as written by the Victorian Policy Director of the Libertarian Party of Victoria in Australia, Pietro Angeli. Today we're up to Chapter 3. If you would like to go back to Chapters 1 and 2, please do so below. That Chapter 1 was What is Libertarianism? Chapter 2 is What is the State? And today we're doing Chapter 3, What is the Free Market Economy? Chapter 3, what is the free market economy? The first question most people ask when faced with the notion that the government shouldn't be paying for thing X is, well then, who will provide thing X? The answer in every case is the same, the free market. Quote, Murray Rothbard, free market capitalism is a network of free and voluntary exchanges in which producers work, produce, and exchange their products for the products of others through prices voluntarily arrived at. The free market is simply the term used to describe free and voluntary exchanges of goods and labour between individuals. This may seem like a simplistic alternative to government providing things to people, but in reality, it is the only way wealth can be created without taking it from somewhere else involuntarily. As Robert Breedlove would say, there's two ways to create wealth, making and taking. A free market capitalist may choose to create a product. As an example, they may build wooden crates. The capitalist must purchase the wood to make the crates, purchase the nails to bind them together, and employ the people who will assemble the crates. The capitalist must decide how many crates to make based on how many they believe they will sell, how much to pay the workers. It must be enough that they attract competent ones, but not so much that they cannot make a profit from the sales. What type of wood to use, how to design the crates, what price to set them at, and where to sell them. The free market capitalist is undertaking a great deal of risk in their enterprise, and they are not guaranteed a profit at the end. If they do make a significant profit, other capitalists will notice there is a fruitful market and look to create wooden crates of either higher quality or lower price, or both if possible. So who benefits from this arrangement? The capitalist will sometimes benefit in terms of profit, but not always. The greatest beneficiary of a competitive and healthy free market is always the consumer, aka the average person, who will find they have access to a greater array of higher and higher quality products at lower and lower prices. The great advancement for the human race that occurred during the Industrial Revolution occurred not because capitalist entrepreneurs earned money, but because steam engines made the creation of high-quality goods cheaper and cheaper. While the average farmer's yearly wage may not have initially increased in the late 1700s, the price of every product imaginable, which only a generation prior had been reserved to royalty and landed gentry, had dramatically dropped thanks to competitive free markets and was now accessible to them. Quote by Ludwig von Mises, "If history could teach us anything, it would be that private property is inextricably linked with civilization." The relationship between government and the free market can be described most simply using the terms public and private. Anything that the government decides to spend taxpayer money to provide for the community becomes part of the public sector of trade. Anything that private individuals create and sell to other private individuals for profit is part of the private sector. As outlined in the previous section, once the state has established itself as the dominant organisation within a territory, it concerns itself first with monopolising violence and justifying its existence. It then concerns itself with expanding its size. It achieves this by expanding the public sector. It is therefore no surprise that governments around the world are filled with the ever-increasing fervour to claim that more things are rights and must be provided to people for free, as they are indispensable services which couldn't possibly be left to greedy capitalists. For reference, if a state economy is entirely comprised of the public sector, that is to say, the state is solely responsible for distributing all goods and services and has total control of the means of production, then that state will have adopted the philosophy of socialism. The 20th century has taught, if nothing else, that the quickest way to destroy a country's wealth and the freedom of its populace is for the state to adopt socialist policies. Libertarians argue that almost everything the government provides would be better provided by the free market. Statists, supporters of the state, argue that certain rights cannot possibly be left to the free market lest poor and disadvantaged people miss out. For the sake of examining the argument, two good examples to analyse are healthcare and cars. The state of Australia, and almost everywhere in the world, provides a basic level of healthcare for free, meaning at no cost. Of course, it's not for free, because the hospitals, doctors, nurses, and equipment all need to be paid for, and are paid for through taxes and inflation. But for the purposes of making a political slogan, the political class refer to the notion that healthcare is free. There is still the opportunity for private healthcare to exist. However, the market is distorted due to the free healthcare provided. There is no market available for a capitalist entrepreneur to try to cater to people who have less money and seek a minimally expensive standard of care, because the entrepreneur cannot possibly hope to compete with the free healthcare. This is especially the case since most citizens would already be paying income taxes and therefore feel they need to take advantage of the services provided by the state. Due to this, the free service provided by the state stagnates. It has no market competition, as nobody could hope to compete against free healthcare for low-income earners. Because there is no competition, there is no incentive for the system to maintain a high quality of care and to minimise costs. The healthcare system will always receive the same amount of money from the government regardless of its performance. If anything, a lesser performance will lead to politicians insisting the public health system needs more money. The quality of the service, therefore, relies entirely on the goodwill and self-imposed diligence of the government employees working in the public health system. Their salaries are also standardised, and therefore there is no financial incentive for them to do a better job. Those that take it upon themselves to ensure a high standard of care will not necessarily receive extra financial remuneration. Because the free market cannot compete for the business of low-income earners who wish to access healthcare services, the private healthcare market only exists for high-income earners. Here, people may pay significantly more money for a higher quality of care, as this is the only way capitalist entrepreneurs can make a profit. This leads to the political class making the obvious observation: public healthcare is free, while private healthcare is expensive. The connection they then draw is that without free public healthcare, only expensive healthcare would exist, and a huge swathe of people would be left without care. This is absurdly false. Quote from Winston Churchill: "Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery." In a free market economy, the first thing that would occur is the market of low-income earners seeking healthcare would be flooded with entrepreneurs seeking to create a low-cost healthcare alternative. This competition between capitalists would then lead very quickly to better and better care for lower and lower prices, as the entrepreneurs would seek to increase their profits by enticing as many customers as possible, despite earning little profit per each customer. The notion that the public sector is required to provide basic services at a low cost is simply untrue, and any market that is relatively free shows this. A good example for comparison is the market for cars. Cars, like healthcare, have a huge spread in prices across the market, from cheapest to most expensive. According to the statist logic of healthcare, car manufacturers should be making only exorbitantly expensive cars for the rich. If someone couldn't afford a $200,000 or $300,000 Ferrari or Lamborghini, they would be forced to walk. And yet reality shows that the most competitive market for cars is that of the affordable car around the $20,000 to $40,000 range if purchasing new. There is also a competitive secondary market for used cars. Because there are far more potential customers in this market, the potential profits for a company are far greater, provided they can supply a good quality car for a low price. Ford, Honda, Toyota, and Hyundai are all competing for the same customers and therefore are in a constant battle to try and provide a better product for a cheaper price. Their profit margins for each vehicle would be far less than the profit margin for a single Ferrari car, but in selling to a higher volume, their overall profits are higher. This is how every single market would work if it weren't for state interference through the public sector. Imagine now the government builds a vehicle and provides it to everyone for free. Immediately, Ford, Honda, Hyundai, and Toyota would be pushed out of the market, for how can they compete with free, even if it is an inferior product? Ferrari and Lamborghini would be relatively unchanged, for their clientele is made up of people wealthy enough to want something far better than a free car, even if they must pay a far higher price. The government's free car would not be competing with any other company and would therefore have no financial repercussions for breaking down easily, not lasting very long, not going very fast, having poor gas mileage, having poor safety features, or having any other shortcomings. The creation of the state's free service has distorted the market and caused the average person to have to choose between a free and poor quality product or an exorbitantly expensive and high quality product. This analysis is true for the majority of areas where the government provides a service, and the services government seeks to provide in Australia are ever increasing. Welfare, construction, transport, healthcare, education, law enforcement, infrastructure, regulation, energy, the judicial system, finance, research, emergency response. All of these areas are less efficient, less productive, and more expensive to the taxpayer because they have replaced the private sector with the public sector or the free market with the state. 2 definitions to finish off this chapter. Free market. An economic system with only a small amount of government control in which prices and earnings are decided by the level of demand for and production of goods and services. In a free market, if demand for a product increases, then so does its price. The free market economy. Statism. The principle or policy of concentrating extensive economic, political, and related controls in the state at the cost of individual liberty. 2. Support of or belief in the sovereignty of a state, usually a republic.